Rachel, lovely to have you here. Welcome, Lavinia. I think we should get started. It's 1 o'clock. I can see we've already got a good number of people joining us today, which is fantastic. So as we gather virtually for this webinar, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place and also to recognise the various traditional lands we link in from today. We acknowledge the elders, past and present, of all the land we work and live on, and their ancestral spirits with gratitude and respect. It is fantastic to see so many people registered to join us today and here already in the webinar space. It's brilliant. I think we all would acknowledge that the value of agriculture has never been so great in Australia as it is today. And the health, wellbeing and safety of our farmers and farming families is really a critical part of being able to achieve and I guess sustain this in the longer term as well. I think we'd also all acknowledge that growth in our agricultural workforce really won't be supported unless agriculture is seen as a profession that is safe. And that's, I guess, safe both physically and mentally. So while at the NCFH we're working really hard to support the health, wellbeing and safety in farming communities, I think we kind of all need to play a part in being an influence, not only in representing safe farming practices in farming today, but also in shaping that culture of safe farming, which both initiates and shapes conversations and also encourages our future farmers to engage in safe practices as the normal way of doing things. We're not here today to point fingers or wave big sticks by any means. Our aim today is really to inspire and empower you to join us in our mission of making a difference to farmers' lives, not only by sharing the beauty of your images and messaging, but also via the influence that your messaging can have on your followers, your friends, your families and colleagues, and their health, wellbeing and safety practices. So I'd like to encourage everybody who's here with us today to add any comments or any questions that you have along the way into either the chat function of the Zoom webinar, or there's also a Q&A section you can add those questions to. And for those that are joining us live on Facebook, if you can just add your questions to the comments section, and hopefully we'll have time today to answer them all. If not, it might be the start of a series of webinars, not just a single one. So our first presentation today is from Rachel Jacobson. So Rachel is the Communications and Engagement Officer for Smarter Safer Farms with Agriculture Victoria. She's worked in agriculture communications for over 15 years and has experience communicating with rural audiences across a range of topics. Today, Rachel will be talking about how the effective use of images can reinforce positive safety messages. So welcome, Rachel, and I'm happy to hand over to you.
Great. Thanks, Alison. Thanks for that warm welcome. I'm coming today from the lands of the Wurundjeri people on the far, far eastern side of Melbourne, just on the edge of the Yarra Valley. So just while I share my screen, I'd like to acknowledge those traditional owners as well. Can you see that, Alison? Yep, great. So once again, thanks for having me. My background in ag communications has spanned lots of different areas across promoting agricultural careers to university students, delivering drought communications, and now supporting Smarter Safer Farms. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that this topic can be quite a challenging topic to discuss publicly. There's lots of really personal stories that are involved in safety on farms, and lots of really tragic personal incidents that we need to be mindful of when we discuss this topic. There are, however, lots of opportunities, and through Smarter Safer Farms, we've been engaging a lot with farmers, and we know from the research that's been undertaken that farmers and rural audiences really love clear, concise messaging, we need to be mindful of tailoring those messages to those audiences, and we need to make sure that our messages and the images that we use reflect the realistic and realities of life for that particular audience. We have a really fantastic opportunity now to use social media to influence behaviour change and create awareness. And they're some of the main themes of what I'll talk to you today about. We also have lots of opportunities to modernise the sector and really demonstrate, as Alison said, that agriculture is a great career choice. And we can do that through social media and the influence we have. The other thing I'll probably touch on lightly is a recognition that social media is just one of the opportunities we have and the platforms we can use. And part of our role, I guess, as communicators is to kind of use multiple channels of communication and include social media as part of that as well. I guess the main motivation for why we're all involved in this space is because there's a lot of research out there at the moment that's saying that, you know, farms are reasonably unsafe workplaces, and we know that over 1,500 people have lost their lives on farms in recent years, since 2021. So this is why we're having this conversation now. Just as a brief overview, I'll give you a little bit of a highlight of what the Smarter Safer Farms program does from the Victorian perspective. Have a little scroll through Agriculture Victoria's social media platforms, and then talk a little bit about the key focus areas that we're addressing in Smarter Safer Farms and how we can influence behaviour change and create awareness through our social media platforms. So Agriculture Victoria's social media is managed by our strategic communications team, and these examples that I'm showing here are just some examples that I've used to promote our farm safety messaging. We have about 24,000 Facebook followers for the AgVic channel and about 9,000 on Twitter as well. Interestingly, from a gender perspective, about a 50-50 split between males and females who are accessing these channels, slightly higher for women, but not significantly. The main areas of Australia are mostly obviously Victorian, with most users and users coming from Melbourne. Followed by outer regional areas, Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo and Mildura. And we do have also some interstate representation with people in Sydney and Adelaide also viewing the channel quite readily as well. These images here that I've put up are just some grabs from some of the campaigns we've run over the last 12 months, mostly around seasonal agriculture timelines. So that's the strategy I've been employing. So we did Fit to Pick over summer, aimed at the horticulture peak season. And we did Fit for Harvest sort of toward the end of last year, with messaging around fatigue management, manual handling, crush injuries, things like that. A lot of it was really around that personal health and wellbeing messaging, with signposting to other resources that are available. This image in the middle around the Farm Safety Creative Competition is part of a collaborative piece we're doing with Kids Safe Victoria around child safety on farms, which is one of the key areas we're looking at in Smarter Safer Farms. And through all of these images that we're using, you'll see we're aiming to demonstrate best practice through that. So through the words that we choose to use, but also through the images that we're putting forward as well. So the key timelines that I work to with regard to social media posts are around school holidays. I've got a couple coming up in the next few weeks around, if you're visiting the farm, think about some of the ways you can protect children on farms. So they'll start rolling out probably later this week and into next week. We obviously do the seasonal ones as well, seasonal posts around particular agricultural activities. And then this one up here on the far right was for Farm Safety Week. So we did a huge campaign during late July last year, just around signposting people to specific safety resources. We get about 1,500 to 2,000 views per post. So we're considering that a reasonably good outcome and a really great opportunity for people to start having safety conversations. The way I've kind of scheduled these slides is kind of in area of priority and where the most risk is on farms and in communities at the moment. So I've started with machinery and vehicles. And these are some images we've taken through the Smarter, Safer Farms image library development over the last probably 12 to 18 months, where we've recognised that there's just not a lot of images out there that promote agriculture and provide an opportunity for people to see themselves in a really safe working environment. So this is a suite of images we're providing through all Victorian government departments to kind of increase the awareness of agriculture, but also how to promote agriculture safely. So we've got over 500 photos in our library at the moment, and throughout the rest of this presentation, you'll see a suite of what they look like. The reason I wanted to kind of highlight machinery and tractors was because this is a main area of risk on farms. So when we are promoting activities in Agriculture Victoria, we're keeping an eye on things that, you know, might be better presented in a safer way. So for example, the man on the quad bike on the right, this is one of the photos that we have in high rotation through our social media platforms because it just demonstrates best practice with a rollover protection on the back of that quad bike. He's wearing a helmet, there's no passengers, and the ground he's driving on is really flat. So that's just one way that we can demonstrate best practice and farm safety through the images we use. We also want to make sure that the images we choose are realistic and modern. So while there was a traditional stereotypical image of the old tractors, we're trying to remove that from the current narrative so that we are showing that agriculture is safe and modern, not belching smoke and exhaust and things like that. And we do still see those photos, and I think it's beholden on us as communicators to really call those out in a polite way if we see them floating around on social media, and just say, hey, there's a better way we can present this this example of the agricultural industry. The next part I wanted to really touch on, because it's one of our really important focus areas in Smarter, Safer Farms, is children and families. We often see, again, those romantic images of children rolling around on haystacks, diving, into dams and creeks and things like that. So part of our work has been to really promote families on farms in a safe way. So we work with Kids Safe Victoria to kind of send out that messaging. But we also know that it's a huge area of risk on a farm. So we took these photos last year just to show how we can use photos of children and families to promote agriculture. So one of the messages that we're trying to promote is that to ensure that children are supervised anywhere on the farm, that there's clean, clear, safe no-go zones and play areas for children. That fences are placed around water sources where children could be accessing them. And that could include anything from water troughs, bores, dams, creeks, wells, etc., etc. So you will see some messaging coming from AgVic and also from Kids Safe Victoria around child safety. And I've got some resources at the very end about the work that Kids Safe Victoria is doing as well. Livestock messaging is really important as well. We in AgVic use a lot of images to sell our story and promote our events and things like that. And while I was researching this presentation, I came across a lot of really interesting stock photos. And I guess that's a message as well, that if you're using images off the internet or from resources such as Shutterstock, there's not a lot that are A, Australian, but also B, showing livestock in safe ways. Acknowledging that, working with livestock challenging due to their size and sorry, lost my place, and unpredictability. But we can show agriculture and working with livestock safely. We've used this image at the bottom of the little girl leading her horse quite a lot to promote child safety as well, mainly because it's not only a beautiful photo, but she's wearing a helmet, she's wearing boots, and she's being supervised. So she's not on her own out there with a horse that's the right size for her to ride, but could be in a dangerous situation. And this photo here for the livestock loading is another one we use quite a lot, because it really does demonstrate a really safe way to load livestock in sale yards. And the thing you probably can't see in this one is just on the left, there's a place for the people to be separated quite clearly from the livestock, which is best practice. So we've used that one quite a lot in our comms as well. I also came across a lot of those old wooden yards when I was researching yesterday, and we're trying to avoid using anything that looks broken, damaged, like it's being held together with baling twine and those sorts of things, and instead flip the narrative and really consider the positive photos we can use. We've also taken loads of photos and provided these throughout government that show diversity in our workplaces. It wasn't too long ago that it was really hard to find photos of women working in agriculture. So we've taken this opportunity to kind of really embrace all these fantastic female farmers and farm workers out there and acknowledge their contribution to this industry, but also ensure that when we are using their images that we are continuing to update the workplace narrative and make sure they're really positive images of people doing all sorts of things in the industry. It only then we're sort of responsible, and then we can encourage people to kind of participate in agriculture and share their stories. The other really exciting part of this piece of work, and something we've been doing a lot, is to build a lot more cultural diversity images into our library. And we've been out to a couple of properties with Indigenous landowners who are doing some amazing work out here in Eastern Victoria, but also we travelled out west to the Warrnambool area to get some of these photos as well. This is a really great opportunity to acknowledge that, we've got a chance now to really build the profile of agriculture for our culturally and linguistically diverse communities and encourage people to participate in the industry. Really interesting statistic is that almost half of all Australians have both parents or at least one of them born overseas, but only 11% of these people are in the agricultural workforce. So part of our role is to encourage people to pursue careers in agriculture, but to do that, people actually have to see themselves working in the industry. So this has been a really great part of the work that we're doing. And just to kind of conclude with kind of the new frontiers of agriculture, we've been taking a lot of photos of people using technology and digital ag as well, because there's lots of safety features that are employed by people using this type of technology. We've got some really great videos on it available where people are mustering with drones, which creates lots of not only time-saving opportunities, but people aren't driving out at night in rough terrain, in all kinds of weather. These photos of the weather stations and things like that, they're just cost saving, time saving and labour saving. So we've been using a lot of those images to promote safety lately as well, but also to promote careers, because a lot of the agricultural courses now are including a lot of ag tech in their course offerings. So thank you. I hope that you've learned a little bit about AgVic's perspective on farm safety and the way we use our social media to promote it. we've got a lot of information available online, but also our partner organisations have some really great resources as well. So if you're interested in child safety, for example, Kids Safe Victoria have a competition open at the moment, as well as some farm safe checklists, and Making Our Farms Safer can provide farm safety advisors to come out and do walkthroughs on properties and farms to kind of advise on, you know, areas for improvement and things like that. So you're very welcome to get in touch with these organisations. And thanks very much for having me. Thanks, Alison.
I'm on mute. Thank you, Annabelle. Thanks, Rachel. That was a great presentation. And I think there's a lot for us to take from that brief presentation that you've shared with us. A couple of things that I really noted, I guess, was that you know, we can really use imagery to promote agriculture in a positive light, but we can also have really beautiful photos while also promoting those kind of safe practices. And it's also a really valuable way of helping to break down some of those stereotypes that we know just don't wash in agriculture anymore. Really interesting also to see that opportunity to collaborate in order to present some of these images as well with your work with Kids Safe. And I know that that's something that the centre here is really keen to do, is to collaborate with people utilising social media to work together, I guess, to make a greater difference, which is something we're always keen to do at the centre. Now, I can notice some questions coming through already on the Q&A, but I can also see that those questions would be both applicable to Rachel and Lavinia. So we might hold off on the questions until after Lavinia's presentation. So I'd love to welcome Lavinia. She's the founder and creative director of Ag Social and the co-host of the popular podcast Generation Ag. Lavinia is a native of Scaddan in northeast of Esperance, and she does understand the challenges and opportunities that are unique to the agricultural industry. Lavinia uses her communication skills to grow the voices of rural businesses and communities, and specialises in creating tailored social media strategies that help individuals and businesses get the most out of their online presence. We're really excited to have Lavinia with us today to share her knowledge and expertise for this event, the role social media plays in creating a safer, healthier agricultural community. Welcome, Lavinia.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you so much, everyone. I feel very privileged to be here. This is a topic that is close to my heart. So without further ado, I will share my screen and we can get into it. So I want to jump straight into it and talk a little bit about each of the platforms that really are relevant in regional areas. Obviously, we've got Facebook, so it's really traditional media. It's very much the one that we have our OG. It's a place where we as regional people use it to communicate what's going on in our lives. It's huge with Facebook groups, and it's something that's really growing in that area. Then we've got Twitter. Obviously, Twitter is hugely popular with farmers, particularly when they want to voice their grievances or what's happening on farm. Not always used in a correct manner, in my opinion, but something that we can keep learning on how to actually create conversations that are appropriate and are safe and that actually tick all the guidelines that Rachel has shared. We've got YouTube. YouTube's something that's super underrated, but it's something that I see farming people and regional people using on the daily, because there is so much value there in terms of connecting with like-minded people via vlogs or via how-to videos. It's such a great one. And then obviously we've got Instagram. It's another one that's really been an OG and something adopted by a lot of regional businesses and agricultural influencers. And this is really a place where people are able to share photos, videos, reels, stories, something that we are still seeing growing today. LinkedIn, obviously something that has not always been huge with regional people, but as we build out and become more of a professional industry, it's something that I am having conversations with all of my clients now. And we are actually really diving into and starting to utilize, because there is a lot of value there and there's a lot of education. And then we've got TikTok, which is a reason for this webinar kind of continuing and sort of creating the conversation today. And I'll talk about that a little bit further on. But TikTok is very new. Some people are still not on board with it, but it's a short video sharing platform, and it's really gone crazy, and it's seen so much growth in agriculture and farming. And I think no one really saw it. I was just on Twitter before, and actually the Weekly Times has just put the top 10 ag influencers up, and it's all very interesting. And the top number 1, 2, and 3 influencers are all huge TikTok stars with nearly 1 million followers each. So it's definitely one that we really need to be aware of and know what's going on to be healthier and safer within the community. So the value of social for regional people is huge. And there are definitely still some people who are navigating it and seeing the value. But I think from the people that I talk with and I communicate with, it's really got a huge lot of support on there. There's so much information. I mean, without today's webinar being on social media, I'm highly doubtful many of you would have attended, because of the value that you can get with social. So, you know, when living in an isolated place, particularly on a rural property that's thousands and hundreds of k's away from other people, this is a way that you can connect and really support other people. And then we've got connection. So it's actually connecting with like-minded people. I know half of my friends are regional and rural people that live in other places in the country doing like-minded similar things to me. And the only reason that we've been able to connect is through social media. Otherwise, I probably would have never had a platform to meet them. And then another one that's hugely relevant now is education. And that is such a great place where we can actually be a better version of ourselves in regional and rural communities, because we don't often get to have those in-person developments that our city counterparts do. So there's so much value in social, and it's such a relevant place to be on. So how social media posts can positively influence your audience's attitudes and values. So social media regionally is used by regional people to communicate. Coming from a business or an influential person, the reason they use it is to actually communicate what's going on farm. I know someone that I love to always use the example of is Camille Camp, who's the cattleman's daughter. She has been amazing in utilizing her platform to communicate her daily stories with what's been happening within her station life, becoming a young mum, and her experience. And through that, she's been able to connect and educate. It's an amazing platform that people are really understanding that agriculture is a space that people want to learn more about. And that's why we've seen all these worldwide trends of farm talk, because for so long we've been an industry that's kind of gone under the radar, and we've been able to get away with things. And now we are getting a spotlight on us, particularly post-COVID. We really need to understand the power of one social media post and really what that can do for your business, but also the negatives that can come if you're not posting things that are potentially could leave you with backlash, or are actually not towards guidelines that are with farm safe, and things that Rachel mentioned in her presentation as well. So what does social mean for a business versus an individual? Well, businesses in ag and regional communities that are using it are usually using it to reach a lot of people. They want to either platform to a lot of people, or they're trying to reach their audience that they don't get to see on the daily. The best thing for it for businesses and agricultural enterprises is that you're able to just tell your story directly to your consumer. And the great part about that is that you have no one creating an agenda for you. You're just able to genuinely tell your story in an authentic manner, which is where the authenticity comes in. As consumers now, they're getting so much more excited about what's happening on farm and in regional communities that they actually want to know who their farmers are. We no longer have the original supply chain where, you know, we harvest the crop, or, you know, we put the cows on the truck. Now people want to see what's happening the whole long way along, including the farmer. And it's a brand. This means you have weight with your business, and you actually have the potential to have really in-depth conversations about your role within the supply chain. as an individual that wants to share your business or your experience in regional Australia, you can become an advocate, which is a play on words, obviously, but this is really powerful and something that MLA and the Livestock Collective are really doing their workshops to improve this. And it's about educating people on your regional experience within you and what you do on an everyday basis, because sometimes we forget that we are so entrenched in our own job and what we're doing that we forget that it's kind of unusual to a lot of people, and that our everyday experience is not the every person's experience. And exposing other people to regional West Australia. We right now have a bit of a crisis in this space in regional WA particularly, because that's where I am. But, nationally, we have a crisis where people aren't moving regionally and we're really struggling with the workforce. This is a great way to promote our industry. So if you're really willing to put yourself out there, it's a great opportunity to help expose us. And that's where the last point comes in. So moving on to posting, because I think that although Rachel did a great job at what is great to post, I think there's still a lack of communication or understanding about what you really can't post. And these are just a few examples of some to highlight, just to have a conversation around, to let you think. So the left-hand side is actually a well-known personality, and they were on a farm and they posted this image of them with a child on a quad bike not wearing helmets. I know that a lot of this sort of stuff happens on farm, but really this is actually against the law. You're not supposed to be on a quad bike under the age of 16, or the fact that they're not even wearing helmets. So I would really be starting to think twice before you're posting. The next one is of a guy on the back of a truck looking up an auger. I think this one speaks for itself. It goes without saying. This sort of stuff is dangerous and shouldn't even be happening anyway, let alone having a photo taken of it, because the impact of it is huge. And I think a lot of the time when we're on farm particularly, things are happening so quickly. You've got 100 things on the go, you're managing staff, that often things like this happen without us thinking twice about it. The first thing you don't want to do is take a photo of it, but the second thing you want to do is think twice before you act. And then the third one, it seems harmless and it's a lovely photo, but another conversation around is that children shouldn't be anywhere near chemicals and spray equipment at all. And that's a little son and father in the sprayer, he's taking him to school. And I totally understand the circumstance, but really, seriously, we shouldn't be exposing our children on farm to chemicals at all. And it can be a bit of a nanny state, but personally, one of my best friends on farm, she was riding a quad bike when she was 9 years old and hit a power pole and almost died. So for me, this hits close to home. It's something that I've always had in my life, that farm safety is the utmost important. And it's even things like, putting a seatbelt on when you're driving the car, even on farm. But if we can stop posting this stuff on social and really have a conversation about why we're not thinking about it, it's a great start, and something that Rachel was able to highlight in the resources as well. Also, farm talk. So originally, the conversation around today started from a viral trend that was due to farm talk, where some people were acting inappropriately with auto steer on some machinery during harvest. And the videos were terrifying, to say the least, but it's actually, with the new manslaughter laws and posting this stuff online, it can do damage not only to that person working on the farm, but the entire operation. And if we want to see the agricultural industry thrive, you really want to think twice before you're posting something that could potentially, it could end a farming business. So we really want to look twice. So yeah, if you've got any time, go and have a look at the hashtag, see what's on there. There's definitely some posts that shouldn't be there, but it's just really interesting to see what people are posting. So I guess you're probably wondering, well, how do I know what to post? And I think it's really about questioning yourself and questioning what's actually happening before you post. So here's just a couple of questions that, if you're unsure, I would ask myself before I was going to post anything. Is the activity being done in a safe manner? Does this lead the farm business to any issues, potentially with the law? Are you comfortable with any backlash? I think people are getting more intelligent on farm than ever before, and people are starting to pull people up, and screenshots exist, as we see from the pages before. So it's not like you can pop it up and delete it 10 minutes later. 10 people may have already screenshotted it and sent it to their friends. So I just really think twice before posting anything slightly controversial that's not a sort of farm health, occupational safety along the lines of that. So look at the farm safety guidelines and just check that it's really along with everything that's highlighted there. So being appropriate online, the greatest way to create a healthy and safe culture online is just think before you're posting. Look at the post and see, is it adding any value? I think a lot of the time people post for the sake of posting, businesses, personal, whatever. If you're a business or you're a person who's putting yourself out there to be an advocate, then make sure you're posting something of value that will genuinely create interest with your audience. And does it align with your personal values? Because if you're aligning yourself as an individual, as an advocate, then you're aligning yourself with whatever you're putting out there. So it's really important to question yourself before you're doing this. The future of social for the agricultural community and the potential for social. So what is the future? Well, I think there's a lot of optimism around. There's a lot of conversation around social. I'm sure you guys all see, if you aren't familiar with me, today I've relaunched my company as Ag Social with an agency with 2 other employees. And I think that's the proof that social media in agriculture is growing, and there are businesses and people that are wanting to get on board and utilize it for their personal branding. So it's really about giving a platform and providing people with opportunity in the industry, and the conversation around why we're here, and create that with our stakeholders. There's so much opportunity online to seek out more ways to be there, and there's so many platforms and there's so many creative opportunities. So it's really exciting to look at all the trends and ways of being transparent online. And authenticity, something that is so important, is being credible, being genuine, and being yourself online, because people will take everything you have with a grain of salt. And the biggest compliment you can get is you're exactly who you are online as you are in person. If you can be who you are always, that will take you a mile. So yeah, that's everything from me. I hope everyone enjoyed that, and excited for some questions.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Lavinia. Clearly, I need to get onto TikTok. I had really only ever thought of TikTok in terms of my kids and the latest kind of dance trend happening. But there's obviously a lot more on TikTok, so that's something I need to check out.
Yeah, for sure.
Really interested to hear your thoughts about that increasing interest from a much broader audience about rural life and farming. I've got to say that's something that came out of our Snapshot Rural Vic project during COVID, that it was an opportunity for people from the city areas to really connect or reconnect with their rural roots. And they were really interested to see what was happening in rural Victoria during that time. So I would agree that there is that really increasing interest in rural life.
Yeah.
Very important messaging, I think, that whole think before you post. It is, like social media can be such kind of a snap happy sort of process, but you just really reminded us, I guess, about why it's so important to think before you post. It's not just about making sure you've got a safe image. It's also about, is the post actually adding value, or is it just clogging up the, the cloud?
Yeah.
And does it align with your values? That's such an important one as well. What are we wanting to portray about ourselves and our values and our culture in farming communities? So really important. And also the potential big impact of sharing a post that is not, going to be well received as well. So
yeah,
that was also a really important point from my perspective. So fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. Look, I can see some questions coming in on the Q&A, and please feel free to add further questions if you have them as we continue our discussion. We're really going to open it up now to the floor, to that question and answer session. So I'm going to raise the first question, which is from Alana. And Alana says it can be difficult to find images that show or demonstrate best practice, and we can't always take them ourselves. So where do you suggest is the best place to get them from? And maybe Rachel, if you want to have a bash at that one first.
Yeah, look, I think this is a really excellent opportunity for people, for creative people and regional photographers to get out there and create their own content. I would definitely be encouraging people to, you know, contribute their photos to agencies and to Shutterstock and some of those places, and get yourself a profile by doing that yourself. Where it's not possible to do that, I acknowledge that it is really hard to find photos online that are representative of safe agriculture, but also of Australia or the particular region that you're wanting to reflect. And I think, you know, there's lots of opportunities for us to collaborate in this space going forward.
Terrific. Lavinia, do you have anything to add there? Any tips of where to get good images?
Yeah, I completely agree with Rachel. I just think you have to be super strategic and creative, and you know, look at high school students in your regional areas that are doing photography and see whether you can align with them, because I think the thing is, it usually comes down to budget. So let's get creative. Is there a local photography group in your region? I know where I'm from, Esperance, they 100% have one. And I am sure so many throughout the country do. So just get creative. Ask for a university intern or someone at a TAFE, or everyone's iPhone takes really good photos now. I think so many people have seen me in some ridiculous poses trying to get, even though we usually pay content creators, like, if I've got to do it, I'm just going to do it, because I think that's where we really have to start showing people and doing it. And then once we do it once, then companies start to realize, okay, yeah, I have to actually pay someone to go out and do that. It's just because we're so early days, people haven't budgeted for this before. So we kind of have to show them the way, and then they'll get on board. Once you do it once, usually most companies and businesses go, oh, yeah, okay, hands down, you were right. But it's just getting that first little insight. And then they are usually on board.
And I guess, like, up and coming photographers are often really keen to see their work being showcased. So if you could showcase their work and acknowledge them as the photographer, if they're, you know, in agreement with that, you know, I guess that has a win-win situation as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think too, so we've used a lot of freelance photographers over the years, and, you know, the daily rate for a freelance photographer is, you know, I guess it depends on the duration of the photo shoot and things like that. But, you know, $1,000 to probably $1,500 a day is probably the going rate. So anything over 2,000, I'd be seriously questioning, you know, what you're going to get for that particular cost. But if you are thinking about creating a budget, that would be kind of the ballpark.
Great, thanks for that. A question from Jackie. I think this one might be for you, Rachel. Are people or organisations able to access the photo library that you mentioned, the AgVic photo library?
Yeah, look, it was predominantly set up to connect Victorian government departments with agricultural images. Whether or not that is accessible to the public, I'll actually take that on notice and find out some more, because it's set up right now on an external image library. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Great, thank you. And another question, what are the presenters' thoughts on video content?
100%. I'm in the midst of finalizing my last 3 clients March reports, and our video content performs 10 times better than everything. All of my clients now have to do videography, because it doesn't have to be paid videography as well. Even I am now doing daily TikTok vlogs of my interesting days. Like today, I'm going to vlog, and people are loving it. Even one of my clients who's a big CEO of a company emailed me and was like, love your daily vlog. Like, it's just little things like that are so powerful that an image can't portray. So even if you're out in a paddock doing something interesting, just get your phone out. Everyone has a smartphone. Everyone can do it. It's not hard. If my dad does videos on his farm and he's in his 60s, anyone can.
And I'd probably support that by saying that the power of video is something that we use to portray success of projects and things like that. So we'll do video case studies and instructional videos. We're doing lots of different pieces, and they don't have to be long. Like for social media, you know, you're looking at probably a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes maximum for a social media video. So people do disengage after about that length of time, but for people to connect with the story and take away a message, having someone who speaks their language tell their story is really important.
And I'm going to ask a kind of a technical question here, I guess, too. So when you're creating video for social media, are there any kind of tips and tricks that people should think about? Obviously, Rachel, the length of time, but even in just, you know, holding the direction of your phone, or the sort of, you know, things to think about.
You go, Lavinia.
Yeah. Okay. So number one, clean your phone lens. So like clean your lens before you're doing your video. Hang on. Number two, I'm just going to show you all something. All right. Because people say that it costs a lot of money and it doesn't. I've got a better version of this, but it's charges missing. But literally I picked this up from Kmart for $15 the other day. And it's a little like Steadicam. You just pop your phone on that, you're good to go. Like everyone, Kmart now, if you have a Kmart near you or go online, they have so much stuff to support accessories now. So I'd say that. Yeah, iMovie for Mac. That's really easy. There's heaps of good apps. But I'm happy if people want to DM me on Instagram later and ask me, and I can send them a heap of stuff, because yeah, it's so easy now. It's so easy.
Yep. And I would support that as well, in saying, and really refine your messaging as well. If you want people to act or change their behavior, or if there's a specific call to action, make sure that it's reinforced throughout the duration of your video. And again, consider the timing. Like, don't put that call to action in the last 10 seconds of a 3-minute video, because a lot of people will have moved on by then. So put it up front and make sure that it's repeated throughout the video.
Yeah, and I guess that speaks to what Jackie's just said here in the chat, that she saying the think before you post school of thought also applies to video content. So a little bit of planning in advance would go a long way.
Yes.
So one of the other questions here is about how we might go about calling out or addressing a friend, a family member, or colleague who's posting content that doesn't positively represent health and safety messaging. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a really tricky question. And I think, you know, the honest answer, and this came up for us a little bit last year during Farm Safety Week, because there was a lot of conversation around child safety and things like that, and a bit of media attention at the time around what was happening in the farm safety space. So my immediate reaction is just to be sympathetic to that conversation, and make sure that it is a challenge. What we often see is, and this is not finger pointing at all, but sometimes it's grandparents and grandchildren who are involved in these, what they probably think is fine practices, but having those difficult conversations is actually really important. And the advice we have always kind of given out is to, you know, have a confront it, call it out, have that conversation. It probably won't go well to begin with, but at least it's starting to raise awareness.
Yeah, I would say the same. I'm a pretty straightforward, blunt person, which agriculture, we tend to be. Honestly, I think a lot of people are still really unsure and unaware of what is and isn't allowed to be posted on social. So like Rachel says, be sympathetic, but also have something to back it up with. So, you know, whether you've got the resource on hand available and just say, hey, probably shouldn't be posting X, Y, and Z anymore because it's really not appropriate or it's actually against the law. And having a backing there, and if you've got the proof and you go about it in a really genuine way, I'm sure most people would respond well to you. And I guess it probably helps the fact for me that I am in the space I am, so people see me as, you know, the one who actually has the knowledge. So, but it would be very hard just if your day job is not social media.
Yeah, I guess we're having some conversations with media agencies at the moment. And really, I guess, trying to build some relationships with them to be able to support them to represent things in a more positive way. So where we could see something that's unsafe, how can we make a suggestion to them as, to, I guess, outline a way that this might be portrayed more safely, whether that be through the imagery or whether that be, through the voiceover that accompanies that imagery. So often I think, it is about showing people better practices and how they might be able to do things in a better way rather than, having that big stick approach can be more readily acceptable to some people too, I guess.
Yeah, and the important thing with creative agencies and media agencies is that traditional media like newspapers and things like that, radio even, are still incredibly well trusted resources in regional and remote communities. So we do actually, it's important and incumbent upon us, I think, to actually have these conversations with agencies and with the media. And if, for example, if we're dropping a media release or something like that, maybe just it's as simple as providing an image that we consider appropriate to support that media release or that piece of advertising that we're commissioning. And if we're commissioning advertising through an agency or doing a campaign, actually saying, we need to use Australian photos. Here's a resource, or here's some I've found on Shutterstock or whatever our source is, and actually being proactive about that and having that conversation up front rather than relying on your agency to come back to you with something that's just not fit for purpose. It's probably a better time-saving opportunity to provide some, storyboards and examples up front.
And I guess that's a really great segue to the next question, because it's really, I guess, highlights the fact that creative agencies don't always have an idea about safety messaging in ag. So do you think there's a need for kind of more discrete guidelines for different industries or different user groups to address some of those issues?
Absolutely. I think anything that we can do to help them navigate this space can only be of benefit to the industry. I think we who work in the industry have a generalized assumption that everyone gets it, but have to be realistic, and most media agencies and creative agencies don't work in agriculture a lot. It's just not their space. So we need to take responsibility a bit for leading them. And if that is curating some specific and bespoke information for them to help inform them, then I think that's a really great opportunity.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. But I also think it's up to the individual businesses as well to be a little bit of savvy on it as well. Like they know, and the agencies that they're using, they're usually bigger businesses. They usually have the budget. So they're going to already have work health and safety implemented in their business, so they know better. So I think it's up to the individual ag businesses too to say, you know what, this image doesn't align. Like, I think they're savvy enough to be able to do that, or they should be. So yeah, I definitely agree. We need to have some industry standards that I think companies can be aware of it too.
Thanks, Lavinia. I've got a question here from Alex. So is anyone having conversations with major rural media outlets, so beautiful glossy magazines showcasing iconic, rugged and risk-taking rural Australia, about their social licence?
It's a really good question. I don't know if I can answer that question. I do know those magazines that are being referred to. I have flicked through them a number of times. My gut reaction is probably not.
I think a part of that as well is probably, allowing people, because we have so many regional people who are creative. And I think COVID, although it's been really hard, it's been good in some areas because now there's a lot more digital jobs available for regional creatives to have. But there's almost like these amazing, beautiful magazines need to get regional people who actually understand involved and creatives and get them to help write pieces and be the photographers on the ground, because they're the ones that have the knowledge and understanding. Because it's one of those spaces that we have a long way to go, but I think that's where the conversation has to start for sure.
Great, thank you. I've got a question here from Joel about using TikTok. So with Facebook and Instagram, your followers are there because they have an interest in what you're posting. But with TikTok, you've no real control over your audience. Would you say there is a risk factor in that you could be opening yourself up to unwanted attention? For example, a video about lambing prep may show a hands-on approach, which those involved in the industry understand is needed, but a 15-year-old on TikTok could see as cruel.
Yeah. So 2 things there. With the way Instagram algorithm works now, the same thing, all of your posts now will be showing up as you scroll through your feed, depending on whether you choose following or favorites. So this will happen on both of those platforms, and it can potentially happen on Facebook too if you post a video and someone likes it. So it's definitely still relevant to all, but more prominently TikTok. Secondly, this is where it comes in that be really confident before you post something like that, but also make sure you've got the knowledge to back it up and the explanation ready for when you get a potential comment like that. And then you should feel comfortable to post it. I've got a lot of friends, a lot of the big influencers in TikTok and ag are some of my friends, and I do talk to them about this stuff on the regular. And they're if something's slightly controversial that they might get a bit of backlash on, they're always ready with an appropriate sort of PR'd response that's educated and informative. So be confident when posting that sort of stuff. But also this just highlights the gap still that in ag versus outside of ag that we have, in terms of we just haven't ever shared our story because it's slightly controversial and a little bit different. So I think that there's a lot of potential to open up, to be vulnerable, to share this stuff. And I think most people, you're going to get there's 80% of people outside of ag that really respect farmers. They don't necessarily know what we're doing every day, but they respect us. Those 20% of the naysayers, that they're never going to be our people. We're never going to get them on our side, but we've got 80% that we can. So yeah, I think there's a lot of potential there, and I would just go ahead, be brave, but be ready with a warranted PR response.
Rachel, anything else to add to that one?
No, I reckon that was really good. And it's about the nuance too, like maybe choosing the right platform for whatever it is you want to post. Maybe TikTok isn't the correct platform for an informative instructional video. Maybe YouTube's a better platform to use. So it's about, not spreading scattergun approach and using all of the platforms. It's targeting the ones that are the best fit for a particular topic.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got so many questions in the chat here. I can't keep up with them all. I'm missing some. So from Gabby here, hey Lavinia, do you think individuals, advocates, have better success in social media than businesses? Is there a way they can work together to ensure the right values?
Gabby, I'm happy you shared this question. So something that I'm really passionate about is this exact topic, and I'm really working on a way to try and see how we can use individuals who grow their platforms as influencers, like the traditional, brand influencer. We're still a little bit behind, and I am working with a few people at the moment to figure out how we can do this appropriately, because a lot of businesses, they see influencers in ag coming up, but there's got to be some value monetarily for these influencers or advocates to really see value on why they would support a business. In terms of the success, individuals have a business is there to promote to their consumer, to talk with their client, to essentially create growth for monetary reasons. They're trying to make business. They're trying to, as an individual is usually there because in the beginning, especially in ag, you just love the industry, you're passionate about your job, you want to share it. So for me, I see them as two completely different entities, and the potential for crossover is huge. We're just still working out how to do that because, yeah, it's happening a little bit in America and Europe, but in Australia, I've been talking with a few big companies, and they're still slowly but surely getting there. But yeah, we're working it out. So hopefully that answers your question.
Great, thanks, Lavinia. And I think there's one last question that we can fit in from Claire, who says she does work with social media and understands some of the nuances of the power of social media in an ag space. She's wondering if you could mention what some of the limitations of social farm safety messaging are that you see.
Yeah, I think there's some limitations, particularly around depending on what the business is, because there are some businesses where it's really crossing the line between what's a farm safe act and what the actual business does. So a lot of my clients work in machinery. And the other day, one of the clients posted their son on the tractor with them. And it was one of those ones where we had to sort of say, is this aligned with the real values? It's such a difficult one because people still aren't really there. But I think the limitations is that we just have to make sure that we are posting appropriate content, and that's what the limitations can be, because you might get a client who sends you through a really cool video, but there's something in the corner that doesn't look right, like Rachel was saying, like something's tied on with a piece of twine or something, there's an old rickety truck in the back that looks like it's, past its days, or, you're driving a truck and someone hasn't got their seatbelt on. So 100% there's huge amount of limitations there.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I spend a lot of time looking at photographs, cropping them, blurring things out, and making sure, and of all the photos that we've taken, I would say there's probably 30 or 40 that we use regularly that fit the brief, which is ensuring that it's a farm safe practice. So, yep, we've got hundreds and hundreds of photos, but it's a really hard job to get them up to spec and then go through a quality assurance process to make sure that they are actually best practice. And that is one of the limitations. It's time and effort, and I think a really important consideration, but yeah, I would consider that a limitation as well, as is people's general apathy and disinclination to read anything about safety messaging. It's a really difficult conversation to engage people about. So when we see a reach of 2,000 people on a safety post that we might put out through Agriculture Victoria, we think that's pretty awesome, because we would probably never reach 2,000 people using other formats. So to us, that's a success because 2,000 people have seen it and they may be having a conversation individually with other people. So that's one of the benefits, but the limitations are still in place, and it's really about engagement.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think those conversations are so incredibly important and can have such a huge ripple effect over time, can't they? Well, unfortunately, we've run out of time today, but it's been a really fantastic session. And we're really grateful that you've all joined us. So thanks again very much to our panellists, Lavinia Weir and Rachel Jacobson. And also like to thank Annabelle McGugan, who's our Marketing Communications Coordinator Extraordinaire, for all her work in developing the concept and setting up today's event. So I'd really like to encourage anyone who's interested in working collaboratively with the National Centre to further our efforts in this area to make contact with Annabelle directly. That would be great. She's very keen to have a conversation with you. Would also like to direct people to the National Centre for Farmer Health media guidelines. So we've developed these really with the aim of making it much easier for people to post both effective images and in their use of language that portrays safe farming practices. And Annabelle's going to email these out to all our registered attendees today. And she'd also love to get your feedback on how you see them as being relevant to your particular industry and any improvements or additions we could make. We're always keen to collaboratively develop and continue to improve the work that we do. So we'd love to have any feedback you have about our media guidelines. And just like to add, I guess, in reference to the media guidelines, that we're also currently working to develop an extension to the guidelines to recommend the use of appropriate images and language to support content and conversations around mental health. So that's another watch this space. But thank you again, everybody, for joining us today. It's been a really fantastic session and may lead to further sessions down the track that we hope that will happen. So thanks everyone today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alison.